Hello and welcome. My name is John Yanofsky. I'm the director of Kupferberg Center for the Arts at Queens College. Thank you for joining us for tonight's KCA online program presented by New York Community Bank. This evening, we're thrilled to partner with the Godwin-Ternbach Museum at Queens College to bring you this artist talk and Q&A with Queens resident and photographer Perry Hu brings a unique and deeply personal narrative to his craft. This discussion is presented in conjunction with the Godwin-Ternbach Museum's current virtual exhibition, Pages from the Photography Collection. And this evening will be hosted and moderated by the museum's co-director, Louise Weinberg. The Godwin-Ternbach Museum, which we refer to as GTM, is an amazing institution with a deep and diverse permanent archive of artistic work. It's worth noting that GTM is the only formal museum with a permanent collection among the other City University of New York campuses. We always like to brag a little bit about Queens College. Now here at Kupferberg Center, we hope you've been enjoying some of our other virtual offerings this season. Our streaming concerts, our artist discussions, literary readings, and gallery talks like tonight. This season has indeed been unique, and we're deeply appreciative of our sponsors and funders who've helped us navigate these times to bring you a full slate of virtual offerings this season. We thank them for their support, including the New York Community Bank, our title season sponsor, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the Max and Selma Kupferberg Family Foundation, our namesake funders, and of course, all of you. Thank you. Which brings us to tonight, which will be a deep dive into the photography and insight of Queens resident artist Perry Hu. A few quick Zoom housekeeping notes before we begin. We encourage you all to turn your viewing settings to speaker view as opposed to gallery view. You'll see the little icon in the upper part of your screen. That'll give you the optimal viewing experience, especially when Perry leads you through a slideshow of his work. There'll also be an opportunity to ask Perry and Louise questions in the chat later in the program. We do ask you to be mindful of our shared space in your comments in the chat. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome your host for this evening's discussion, Ms. Louise Weinberg. Hey there, Louise.
Hi there. Good evening to everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight for this artist talk. As John mentioned, my name is Louise Weinberg and I'm co-director of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum at Queens College, where I oversee exhibitions and collections. I work with my co-director, Maria C. Pio, who is currently on maternity leave, and our museum's assistant, Stephanie Lee. It's always so lovely to see so many faces virtually in this space. I wish to thank QC President Frank Wu, who happily has joined us once again for a GTM event. I want to thank everyone involved in the production of this event, including John and the crew of KCA, and of course our speaker tonight, artist Perry Hu. If you had not had the chance, after the program, I invite you to view our website at www.gtmuseum.org. There you will find information about upcoming programs, as well as information on our spring virtual exhibition, Pages from the Photography Collection, Feininger, Genthe, Gibson, Schwarzenbach, and Warhol, which went live on March 1st and draws upon the museum's photography holdings. I want to take a moment to thank our donors and funders, including Friends of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum, the Avery Arts Foundation, the Matisse Foundation, Kupferberg Center for the Arts, and Queens College. Without their support, we would not be able to bring you these programs. Lastly, given that we are all together in this virtual space, I just want to go over a few reminders for our program this evening. Please use the chat function to submit any questions or comments throughout the presentation. Please remain courteous and respectful. Hateful language of any kind will not be tolerated. Tonight, I am thrilled to welcome artist Perry Hu, and I would like to start off with a brief introduction. Perry is a second-generation Chinese American. Among his earliest memories is the 1972 live feed of Nixon using chopsticks at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. Beginning in grade school, Perry assisted with the family livelihood at his mom's Chinese restaurant, where drawing served as a favorite pastime. After studying art at Yale College and UC Berkeley, he worked in the San Francisco Bay Area in the arts. Seeking firsthand encounters with the world's cultural heritage, he set off to circle the globe to see a portion of what there is as pictured and described in his studies. This began an ongoing journey lasting well over 2 decades of travel and exploration in Asia, particularly China and Tibet. Based in New York since 1997, Perry has specialized in providing exhibition services to museums and galleries, including design, art handling, and installation for projects at the Asia Society, China Institute, Japan Society, and others. Turning his thoughtful gaze in recent years on photography and historical research, Perry has centered on 2 diverse but harmonious points of view: the macro recording recent developments in Chinese society, and the micro examination of his own family stories and history. We encourage you to visit his website, www.perryhu.com, for more information. And now I'm going to turn this over to Perry.
Thank you so much, Louise, for that introduction and for inviting me to share my photographs this evening in conjunction with GTM's virtual exhibition. And thanks to John and the team at KCA for hosting this event. And hello to everyone out there who's zooming in for this presentation. Thank you all so very much for your interest and for being present. This survey of images from my collection serves as an appreciation of photographic technology for its role in sustaining our bits of personal narrative and collective history. This is a journey into pictures, and I prepared a raft of them to float on by. You are merging onto my journey in Pakistan in 1997. The Asia Society in New York has sent me to Karachi for the dual task of acting as museum courier and as designer for an exhibition of the ancient Indus Valley. I had the opportunity to visit excavation sites at Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, and I was fascinated by the Bronze Age civilization that I had not known so well previously. Its area spanned today's Pakistan into Gujarat state, larger than contemporaneous ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. Across the region, Indus builders replicated a grid pattern urban plan template with streets aligned north, south, and east, west, with advanced integrated subterranean sanitation, that is well-graded trenches for water and sewer. Weights and measures and the proportions of the building bricks were standardized across the region. An abundance of fine handicraft and seals and seal impressions evince communities thriving on trade with far-flung partners on the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. And the absence of grand palaces, monuments, and temples may indicate a very egalitarian social strata. In the 19th century, the then prominent remains at Harappa were repurposed by the British Raj as substrate for the rail ties of its Multan to Lahore rail line. And unfortunately, at the excavation site at Mohenjo-Daro, the site is at risk because of soil salinization. With the script of the Indus Valley still unciphered, it's really hard to know the specific legacy of the civilization as a tributary or proto to our present day. And it's unknown why this sophisticated civilization began to decline some 3,300 years ago. Now, a couple years earlier, I was living in Oakland, California, and as Louise mentioned, I decided to embark on overseas travel, determined to have first-hand encounters with art architecture and historical monuments, only known to me secondhand through books and reproductions. I had trained as a painter, and I was beguiled by the powers of illusion. I made a pilgrimage to see the Giottos in Assisi, and no photo taking was allowed at the Basilica of St. Francis. Though I was able to photograph this painting restorer at the sanctuary of San Damiano down the hill. And when I pointed my camera at this group, she kindly turned her work light to illuminate the faces. In Vienna, this is a close-up of Clio, the muse of history, in Johannes Vermeer, an allegory of painting. Vermeer painted the view into a room and over the shoulder of an artist as he begins to render his muse. And with this old-timer selfie here on Zoom, it's fun to add a couple rounds of recursion with you. There has been much speculation that Vermeer used camera obscura, a projection chamber device, to optically translate interior settings into his paintings. Whatever his method, it's masterful. Now, the practice of fixing an optical image by chemical means inside a camera has only existed in our material culture for 182 years, since the advent of the daguerreotype in 1839. This is among the earliest extant photographic images of the Acropolis made by Joseph Philibert Guiraud de Pingay. This is reproduced from the Met, and it's the Erechtheum in Athens at the Acropolis. And this is the Damascus Gate of the old city of Jerusalem, built by Suleiman the Great of the 16th century. These are the first travel photographs of the Levant. I came by 152 years later to the Erechtheum and the Damascus Gate, and I'll show you some more photos from my trip. This is fishing in the Mediterranean and Antalya, the Roman library of Celsus at Ephesus. The landscape at Cappadocia. And this is the tomb of Sufi poet Mevlana Rumi in Konya. The approach to Al-Ghazena, or the treasury at Petra. This is the surrounding landscape there. The Giza pyramids. And the closer up context at the second pyramid. This is a composite of 28 photographic slide images by Ad Reinhardt, courtesy of the Ad Reinhardt Foundation. Reinhardt, who may be most known today for his hovering color brick paintings and his late career black cruciform paintings, you might also know his chuckle-worthy comics instructing how to look at art. Perhaps not as well recalled today is that he taught as a professor of Islamic and Oriental art at Brooklyn College, Hunter, and elsewhere. Reinhardt charged himself up with numerous circuits of travel through the Middle East and Asia, amassing a collection of over 12,000 slides like these. And he shared his images and integrative knowledge copiously. An eyewitness reported that he projected as many as 2,000 slides at one sitting. And for me, his art as art writing, edited by Barbara Rose, was for me an art restart. Here I'm in India, Vellore and Halibut, the Jain pilgrimage site at Saranabalagola. These are Himalayan pilgrims at a Buddhist cave in Ellora. the Hindu Kailasa temple, entirely sculpted out of the cliff face. Reclining Buddha at Ajanta. That's me at the Agra Fort. Taj Mahal in Delhi. On this trip, I entered mainland China for the first time and cycled and circled about Tiananmen in Beijing. This is dancing in Nanjing. I made it as far west as Chongqing, the wartime capital of the National Republican government during the Sino-Japanese War. My maternal grandfather flew in and out of here during that period, and now I understand that my father also went to college there at this time. In the center, you see the Liberation Monument, which marked the victory in World War II in 1945. And in 1950, it was renamed the People's Liberation Monument. From Chatham Dock, I boarded a passenger boat onto the Yangtze River for a view of the scenic Three Gorges. The Yangtze, along with the Yellow River to the north, are China's vital heart and lungs. Prior to the construction of the Three Gorges Dam, the Gezhou Dam was the largest in China, and this is the lock chamber descent. I entered Wuhan for the first time, my father's home city. It was a quick float through. Oops. I disembarked in Anhui province to hike up Huangshan, the Yellow Mountain. My visit coincided with May Day, International Labor Day, and the peak trails were overflowing with holiday visitors. No vacancies at the guest houses, so the local authorities lent out People's Liberation Army winter coats to warm those overnighting outside. In the morning light, I staged this self-timer to record my ambivalence at this loose fit suit-up. Returning to this moment, I recall, both as the grandson and son of Kuomintang military veterans, swirling waves of anxiety and curiosity arising within about origins and history, which I was not so well equipped to sort or process at the time. I did have the question, how did I get here? In my move to New York, as Louise mentioned, my paid occupation centered on museum preparation, art handling, and designing exhibitions, often as fate would have it, with materials arriving with origins in China. One example at China Institute is this display of Song and Zhou dynasty bronzes from along the Yangtze. On the right are large ritual bells called nao. It's not clear how these bells were used, but they were buried in this upright manner, and for sure, there were no simple efforts to manufacture. For the musicians out there, in the oval cross section, hitting the center of the bell is one note, and the side, the pointy side, would give you a minor third or a major third. How did they came up with this 5,000 years ago? We don't know, really. Working on such projects with incoming made in China materials has enabled another occupation of mine, which is that of devising my projects of me made in America, making expeditions outgoing to the other direction. And my interest in traveling in China is really coincides with much of the world's intent China watching these past decades. How would the world's most populous country calibrate this so-called bird cage of allowing the flight of market reforms within a socialist framework? It's been extraordinary to see the vital indicators steadily rise. It's staggering heavy lift of hundreds of millions out of economic poverty. But not without the growth pains of relentless and broad societal transformations. So this is the typical family unit of, oh, looks like there's latency here. This is the typical family unit in China in the late 20th and early 21st century. Often the child would be raised by grandparents as parents migrate for better work. This is Shanghai in 1999, a giant twin dragon on a mooncake on Shanghai Road. Oh, on Shanghai, Nanjing Road, I'm sorry. There were around-the-clock preparations for the 50th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. So this is the view of Pudong from the Bund, the development there then. And this is 20 years later. Here revisiting the People's Liberation Monument in Chongqing in 2019. This is Datong, the three-time dynastic capital, and more recently, a coal city, which has staked its past glories into refreshed city fortification to encounter anticipated swells of tourism. An amenity of Datong Airport becoming more common. The next two images are photographs by Felice Beato, taken at the Qing Emperor's Yuanmingyuan, Garden of Perfect Brightness, also known as the Old Summer Palace. This is the Imperial Porcelain Palace and the Wenchang Flourishing Culture Pavilion. Now, these are the only photographs of Yuanmingyuan prior to be burned to the ground during the Second Opium War by British and French forces led by the 8th Lord Elgin Vast imperial collections were looted or lost, including the world's largest encyclopedia of its time. Now, among the ruins that you can see today is a restored European-style walled maze for present-day diversions. I think that's a bit like walking the Great Wall, which might recall other historic border concerns of the Middle Kingdom, encroachments from the north. But it wasn't all threatening in the past. This is a representative foreigner from a Tang Dynasty tomb. At the westernmost reaches of the Great Wall is Yumengguan, or Jade Gate Pass, which regulated the silk trade and interaction with the West for centuries, beginning in the Han. Lesser known, perhaps, is the southern Great Wall, or the Miaozhang Bianchang in Guizhou and western Hunan, designed by the Ming to cordon off and repel certain Miao peoples. China's loss in the Opium Wars resulted in forced openings of new trading ports with concessions to European nations who could break out the previous soul-through way of trade at Canton. By 1860, the river port of Hankou was included in this. And by the way, the historic tri-cities of Hankou, Hanyang, and Wucang make up today's Wuhan. Oh, and you just saw the customs house of Hankou, where all the trade would pass through. Another result of the Opium Wars was that Christian missionaries were allowed to practice throughout China. And this was concurrent with perhaps the most destructive civil war of all time, with the theocratic Taiping Heavenly Kingdom crusading for survival in Nanjing. Louise mentioned my earliest memory of consciousness of China. It also included some ping pong diplomacy. Yeah, so in 1972, Nixon opened a new chapter for US-China relations. But looking back at the decades of engagement, it's replete with ups and downs. And we're not sure how this superpower redemption game plays out. This is an internet bar of the aughts in Shanghai. And I think we all know now that China has leapfrogged into the smart tech era. Oops. Well, not sure what this future looks like. I think this is someone's notion of a Belt and Road Initiative. And maybe showing up on your corner soon. Next wave convenience. The most delightful portion of China travel has been encountering the geographical and ethnic diversity within. There's so much to expose yourself to, the history and the cultures. Hand-pulled noodle. This is a portrayal of Mao in his hometown of Shaoxan, where with representatives of all 56 officially recognized ethnic groups in China. This is a Zhuang in Guangxi and in Yunnan, Hani community. I believe this is Yi in Shaxi, Yunnan. Nashi bowling. Longhorn Miao woman demonstrates her head dressing technique. Further west into Tibetan territory. This is in Gansu, Shahe. I'm sitting down here for a Kazakh lamb feast. Islam entered China about 650 and Christianity about the same time. This is Lanzhou, the first bridge over the Yellow River, and the Great Mosque in Xi'an. This is rebuilding in Wintran a year after the devastating earthquake of 2008. The region is populated by the Chang minority, and it was literally decimated by that event. This is along the Min River. This image shows the Diashi Reservoir, which in the 1933 earthquake engulfed Diashi village. Further west, this is Danba County, where rivers converge to form the Dadu River. The steep river valley is the home of the Jiarong people, who are notable for their watchtowers. I happened upon a Fengqingjie, or a local customs festival, and I learned that the social scientists in Chengdu worked with village elders to revive customs that had been dormant for decades. And a new paved square was created in town for this hybrid festival of old and new. This is a beauty contest, which everyone seemed excited about. This is a village elder closely examining a old textile remnant. And here a young girl with her Hello Kitty bag. So quickly, I'm going to run through some slides of Tibetan areas showing pilgrimage and circumambulation, or Kora. This is in Yading, around the mountain, the emanation of compassion. This is a provisions truck for this group pilgrimaging to Lhasa. This would be a trip of hundreds of kilometers. This is in Lhasa at the Yogan Temple. Across the way from the Potala Palace, and circumambulating and entering the palace. And surrounding in the surrounding areas in Lhasa, there are monasteries and many Kora routes. This is auto back rub for merit. Here is an image from the shrine outside the birthplace of the 7th Dalai Lama in Litang. And the Tasi Lompo Monastery in Rukadze. This is Jiangzi, the Kumbum. And here, prayer flags bless a source of power. So Qingming is a couple of weeks away, and this observance of paying your respects to ancestors and tomb sweeping is something that's become more resonant to me, and as the years roll by, and then as I research in China. So I'm going to conclude this presentation with a personal note. Oh, first, I want to show this Qingming Senghe Tu. It's the along the Yangtze River at Qingming. It's a depiction of Kaifeng at Qingming, and it's a very famous hand scroll that was enlarged as a animated video projection that undulated for the Shanghai Pavilion, or Shanghai Expo, about 11 years ago. But this is my maternal grandparents in Taipei in 1986. It's Father's Day with a cake. My grandfather spent his last years in the States. This is our porch at our old house in Bucks County. I recall my father as loving ballroom dancing and with his friends playing mahjong and singing Chinese opera. When I told him that I planned to take a trip around the world to see things, he immediately and enthusiastically said, "Good." These two images that are square are from a medium format camera. This one, belonging to my father, it's a beautiful Zeiss Icon 6x6 bellows fold-out Tesla lens camera that was a toy of mine as a child. I think it was Army issue. He was a Department of Army civilian aiding the US military in the Korean War. This, I believe, is perhaps the last family portrait of our family together before my father passed away in 1980. I think this is my birthday. In the previous year, we took our only family trip to Asia together. We went to Taiwan and Hong Kong. It was when Carter and Deng provided an opening, and my father took it to seek his father's grave site in the mainland. And it was his first time back in 30 years. We waited in Hong Kong as he went into, took the train to Wuhan, and he did not find the grave. But he did find a first cousin, Liu Deshi, who I had the pleasure of meeting 2 years ago. He's 94. When I met him, he immediately produced this photograph of the family. That's my brother and my parents and me at Jumbo Restaurant in Aberdeen, Hong Kong. On the back, my father inscribed himself as unworthy older brother. This is a second cousin, Liu Deshi's youngest son, who's holding that photograph. When I asked him what his occupation was, he told me bell tuner. It turns out that he has spent his career trying to work out the technical aspects of replicating ancient Chinese bells. This is Bo Xue, a school that both my father and his cousin attended. It was started by Griffith John, a missionary of the London Missionary Society. When the Japanese were encroaching on Wuhan, my father changed schools. He went to Baldwin, and I was able to find in their archives a class picture from 1938. Top center is my father. I've also made a trip to my mom's hometown in Yiyang, Hunan. These are cousins in Wutan. This cousin is raises pigs. The life there is, in many ways, very traditional. This is the first meal I had with these cousins in 2009. On the lower left is the matriarch of the clan, my great aunt, who raised my mom and my older aunt when they were small children. She shared with me her photo collection, which included my immediate family here in the States. Images of them. And here I'm sharing an image of my grandparents' wedding photo with her. And other sharing here. These are second cousins with a photograph of their mom, who was the oldest cousin of my mom's generation and my mom's playmate when she was very small. This is tomb sweeping, Laojia style. This is my great-great-grandfather's tomb. And my great uncle and great grandfathers. resting place. And I will conclude just showing some photographs of my second cousin's children, the next generation. And here's one of them in a reverie with my Ricoh point and shoot. So that concludes my presentation.
So Perry, thank you so much. That was just really, really beautiful. Even though I've seen them 3 times already, I love your edit, by the way. So I just want to, I've been looking through the chat, and of course, our president, Frank Wu, has come up with the question, which was on my mind as well. And he has asked, are you perceived outside the US as Chinese or American? How about in China? Do they assume you're an Asian tourist in the Middle East?
I would say it's changed since my earliest visit. I think I could not hide the fact that I was not a local when I first visited China in '94. Sometimes they might think I'm from Guangzhou or Hong Kong or Taiwan because of my dress and just my mannerisms. But I think nowadays, until I speak, I could probably pass as Chinese. But certainly I'm perceived as American once I start talking to people. But Chinese American. I don't know if that addresses the nuance, but I'll leave it there.
We talked, you and I discussed this a little bit about how some of your photos are extremely intimate, and I feel that you are right in the place with your subjects. And then once in a while, there's kind of a step back. And this, you mentioned the in a school, you felt like you had to ask permission to take the photo, which is, with the proliferation of iPhones and phones and people taking a billion pictures a day, that question of, the distance and the permissions, I think it's always comes to mind.
I think it really depends on the context. So in the school, I was in a captive space, and I wanted to take pictures, so I did ask permission, and I was able to take a number of them. This is a Saturday morning calligraphy class in Lausanne. Some of you may know of the big Buddha that's there at the confluence of rivers, but I'll just let this run. Let's see if I can get it to run here. These are some images that were edited out that can be our wallpaper. But it really depends on the context. I am, I think, working in a street photographer mode and carrying a DSLR and a point and shoot. And surely I'm taking a lot of stealthy images. And but if it's something I'm really interested in and I start hanging around a lot for a longer period, I may, talk to people and ask for permission. And but rarely do I ask, I'm not asking people to pose, but I may ask to take pictures, ask permission to take a picture.
So in the chat, Julie Che has asked when or what year was your first trip to mainland China?
That was 1995.
Okay, 95. Let's see, what do we have? Someone, oh, Janet Shore asked, what museum is this? I believe it was the first image you showed of the bells that were excavated. And the walls were kind of a muted kind of plum color.
Oh, that is a China Institute here in New York at its old location at 65th Street. And it's now located downtown in the Wall Street area on Rector and Washington.
And your friend Arnold Cannervogel has asked, Perry, if money was no object, would you spend more extended time traveling in China? We probably know the answer to that already.
I think I would. Yes, I would. I do have a number of things I do want to research.
So you're not done by any means.
No.
And let's see, Julie Che is asking again, who are these couples wearing crowns? I think that was in the middle.
It may have been the wedding photography that you see around cities, and that's the low-hanging fruit of photography. People are posing and joining the fun.
Okay, now let's see. Connie, and forgive me for the pronunciation, Connie Ji Hung has said, in Chinese, unworthy brother is a humble way to address self in writing, in response to what your father wrote. And Julie Che is asking again, in the travel pictures, how do you take pictures of people so they're not looking at the camera?
Well, that's easy. You just snap the picture when they're not looking, and that's most of the time. And you know, these are a batch of things that I've edited. So for every image that you see, there may be 100. So it's a selective process. So whatever I want to show, it's an illusion what I present to you.
So let's see. Lena has said, thank you for sharing these amazing images, Perry. Do you speak Mandarin?
I can get by okay. I regret to say that I'm a Chinese school dropout as a child, but I did take Mandarin in college. And when I started working with projects from China with Chinese couriers, I realized that why can't I talk with these people? Why can't I converse? So, you know, it's about 13 years ago, I made a concerted effort. I got a tutor and I was doing online learning, and the best way to learn Chinese is the immersion. So the travel improves it. And I have to say, smartphone dictionary is key. It's my reading has improved a lot in the last few years.
And let's see. So, I mean, the comments here are incredible photos, amazing. I mean, you know, everyone is agreeing with me on the power of your work. Let's see. David Yu has said, thank you, Perry. So wonderful to see this body of work together. Can you speak to the influence of traditional narrative or genre painting in your work? And it's probably in reference to some of the ones you just flipped through.
Well, I'd say that the influence is there because when I started out studying art, I was a representational painter, and I was making what you could say is in the genre of genre painting, where there's a narrative. And in fact, I would say that, you know, in grad school, I went in as a representational painter, and I came out doing film and video installations. but I think I hit a wall with what I was doing representationally, because I was trying to paint from memory, and anyone who's tried to paint from memory knows it's hard to make it up. It's hard to create something naturalistic from your head, and you have to, draw. But I was making some autobiographical paintings, and I think doing more abstract experimental work. I've done full circle, and I think the travel and photography in China is finally dealing with the issues that I was grappling with as a young person learning to paint.
Let's see. Okay, Derek Bell has said, Perry, in your travels, what do you think you were searching for? I think you just answered that, didn't you?
Well, I did. I don't know if I said in my talk, use the word expedition, but expeditions in the past, you have from hunter-gatherer foragers looking for new sources of food to invaders, and or merchants and proselytizers, serving new lands. I think for me, it's more of a rummage, through a multi-level lost and found.
That's beautiful.
I think there's something that I feel like well, it's kind of a fear of missing out. There's definitely a lot to know about where my parents came from. And when I think about their lives, it's I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, how whiplash transformative their lives were growing up in the mid 20th century. And who knows, my father was educated in schools that were created by British and American missionaries, and he spoke English, and which was his ticket, I think, to come to the States eventually. But I wonder, what that was like for him in China, because that was a very rarefied opportunity within China. I think part of the transformation of missionaries in China was they transformed society for women and for education. Many of the missionaries were women because they had a lot of freedom to do things that as they wanted in China that they couldn't do, say, in the States.
Right. So Noelle Alicia has asked you, what do you do with all of your selfies?
I do have a selfie gallery.
Oh, where's that?
It's private.
You didn't share that with me.
Oh, but well, I shared some images, just like with the other images. I've edited and shared a few here.
I know. Let's see. I think we have time for one more question. Audrey Gottlieb has said, it's interesting that Lord Elgin, quote unquote, liberated artifacts from China. How do the Chinese feel about colonial looting? Do they campaign for the return of the artifacts?
I can't speak so well to this but I am aware of that happening in the, on some level in the museum community. But I couldn't speak about it with any detail.
Okay, so we're dangerously close to our cutoff time. So Perry, I want to thank you again. This has been really, really wonderful. And I can tell you from the comments in the chat that everyone has been really moved by this and all the work. I know all the work you put into this. So I want to thank you again, and I'm going to turn this over again back to John Yanofsky.
And thank you, Louise, for
Oh, you're
inviting me. It was kind of out of a blue invitation, and I'm delighted I had this opportunity and to be shepherded by you.
You're so welcome. It was my pleasure, really.
Oops, I'll stop this.
Oh, all right. Unbelievable, unbelievable program, Perry and Louise. Thank you so much for guiding us through that. It really was a pleasure to be able to showcase not only Perry's work, but always shining a light on what the collection of the Godwin-Ternbach Museum has. So we're very, very excited to continue to have people know about it. But we always like to just share how people who are watching can find out more information. Perry, is there a website you want to mention, or how people can view your work ongoing? I'm going to unmute you, Perry. You were muted, Perry. There we go.
Yeah, it's perrywho.com.
Great. And the Godwin-Ternbach Museum's website, where you can always find out what's happening there, is gtmuseum.org. I'm really excited to see what Louise and her partner in crime, Maria, have up for the continuing season, but not only mining the permanent collection, but also showcasing new exhibitions. And here at Kupferberg, you can always find out what's happening on our online program, our virtual season, by visiting our website at kupferbergcenter.org. But most importantly, we're so glad that you all joined us for this evening. We do hope to see you back here for another KCA online program. There will be another Godwin-Ternbach Museum virtual program in May, so please tune in for that. But most importantly, we're so glad that you all joined us for this evening. Please stay safe and be well.